Alright, so this is the second part of my getting cultured, or whatever I decide to call it. This man is Fernand Léger. He was born in 1881 and he died in 1955. For people like me that are uncultured, those numbers don't mean anything. So, to put it in perspective, Picasso was also born in 81 and lived about 20 years longer than Fernand Léger. So, when you see Fernand Léger's art, think this guy was influenced and alive at the same time as Picasso. Okay, that's really what matters. Don't try and remember these weird dates. This man was the forerunner of pop art, and you'll see it in his art. He was French, and he was born in Normandy, I believe. Alright, so this is one of his earlier works. It's a form of cubism that's called tubism, because of all the cylindrical shapes in the art. This painting is called Nudes in the Forest, and I include it because you will see his art evolve over the years. And keep in mind how pop art looks now and how pop art looked 20, 30 years ago. This is before all of that. This was 1911, and he started painting when he was 25. So he started painting around 1900. So this is like 11 years into his career. It started moving. So you remember Nudes in the Forest was the previous picture you just saw. He started moving much more abstract. This painting, he started using more primary colors and then throwing in one or two other colors. So in this particular painting, he had red and blue, black and white, and then he threw in orange, I believe. And using primary colors and then throwing in one more is something that you see a lot in pop art today, actually. Nothing quite so... I would say that this is more abstract than what you see today, but keep in mind, you may never have heard of this man, Léger, but this painting right here, Woman in Blue, sold for $39,241,000. So that will help put it into perspective how important this man and his art were and how they formed the basis of pop art today, along with Picasso and the others of the era. This was 1911, Woman in Blue. This is 1914. This one is called Soldier with a Pipe. And what happened was so he started doing abstract things from about 1911 to 1913. And then he became extremely inspired by seeing light hit metal of different colors, mainly white. So light hitting white metal. And he thought it really struck him, and this is called his mechanical period, where he decided to start changing his art. But you can still see that it's the same artist that painted Woman in Blue and Nudes in the Forest. It's just his evolution, and you can also still see like the hints of red. There's still like some of that primary color stuff going on. This one was 1921. He did paint until he died, basically, which was 55. But I would say that the 20s and then the 30s. The 20s were an era, and then the 30s were an era, but then the rest of it was different, and I'll explain that in a moment. So this was 1921. This painting is called Still Life with a Beer Mug. He started using... Now you can see that this is very reminiscent of current pop art. There's color, there's a lot of straight lines, there's a lot of shapes. It feels less abstract than Woman in Blue, for sure. And what happened was, in the 20s, this was 1921, you might remember the 20s as being called the Roaring 20s, and things became very modern, or at least they tried to be. Everyone was looking towards the future, and cinema became extremely big, and it really inspired Léger, and so he started doing paintings more like this, which is why I ended the presentation with this painting, Still Life with a Beer Mug, because throughout the later parts of his career, he moved to Venezuela and started doing like stained glass, which is not uncommon because he was trained first as like an architect, and he other than paintings, he was a sculptor, and he did things like glass work. So it's not like he like all of a sudden was like, oh my gosh, I love stained glass or something. It's just that I don't consider that part to be with the rest of his work. Anyways, this presentation happened because one of my coworkers wore a very Picasso... I would say it was more Picasso-esque than Léger, but I guess the reason it was Léger is because she wore this blouse that had some squares on it that were 3 different colors, and they were the primary colors. And one of the stylists saw her and said, "Oh, Fernand Léger." And she didn't know who it was. I didn't know who it was. And I was like, okay, great. Guess I have to make another freaking presentation about this. So, that's that.